Verdict in the Markeith Loyd case. We understand, if we can bring that picture up, the jury is actually coming back into the courtroom. We know that Markeith Loyd is in the courtroom, looking at a live picture over here that you're streaming. Greg, it's now on our TV screen. The judge, she is back in, and we are waiting for the jury to be seated, where we will hear the verdict. Again, Markeith Loyd, this is the first of his 2 murder trials. He is charged with the the murder of his pregnant ex-girlfriend, Sade Dixon. But again, he could be found guilty, not guilty on different counts here. There are possible charges that he's facing. Guilty of murder, first-degree murder, attempted first-degree murder, felony murder, attempted felony murder, as well as a guilty charge or not guilty charge on possession of a firearm by a convicted felon. This is a trial where Loyd testified himself why he admits that he shot Sade Dixon, but he said he did it. He went into warrior mode because she actually had a gun, and he was concerned for his own safety.
All right, the judge, Marquez, is speaking now. Let's listen in. Again, this all happened in 2017, December 13th, after 3 months of dating. An on-again, off-again relationship was off again. Sade Dixon was at home when confronted by, again, Markeith Loyd, and the charges that he faces up to first-degree murder. There are some lesser-included charges, second-degree murder of Sade Dixon, maybe manslaughter as well, depending on how well of a job defense attorney Linneman did here. He faces the death penalty if convicted of the most serious charge, but in Florida now, the jury then will come back in the penalty phase and must decide 12-0 that death would be appropriate for this. But again, there are a number of lesser included. He also faces not just count 1, but also count 2, which is first-degree murder of an unborn baby, count 3, which is attempted first-degree murder of Ronald Stewart Jr., who's the brother of Sade Dixon, count 4, attempted felony murder of Dominique Daniels, who came to the door when she heard the scuffle outside and shots were fired in her direction, and count 5, attempted felony murder of Stephanie Dixon Daniels, the mother of Sade Dixon, who also came to the door. There is an additional count as well, and that's possession of a firearm by a convicted felon. Markeith Loyd convicted 4 times. That came out in court as well. Another thing that came out in court, which was interesting, was the shooting that happened in front of the Walmart in January while he was on the run. But the jury never heard in court that there was contact made by any of those bullets, or what the fate of Deborah Clayton, the sergeant with OPD, was. That's for the next trial, which will happen in the year 2020.
We can tell you that the jury, Greg, begin deliberating
verdicts, please.
At 1 p.m. Right now, the judge has seen the verdicts, and she is asking them to be published, so we're going to listen in.
In the Circuit Court of the 9th Judicial Circuit of the State of Florida in and for Orange County, the State of Florida versus Markeith Loyd, case number 2016 CF 15738. Verdict as to count 1. We, the jury, find as follows: as to count 1 of the charge, the defendant is guilty of first-degree murder. Verdict as to count 2. We, the jury, find as follows: as to count 2 of the charge, the defendant is guilty of first-degree murder of unborn child. Verdict as to count 3. We, the jury, find as follows: as to count 3 of the charge, the defendant is guilty of attempted first-degree murder. Special finding form regarding statute 775.087, Florida statute as to count 3. During the commission of the offense, did the defendant actually possess a firearm? Yes. During the commission of the offense, did the defendant personally discharge a firearm? Yes. During the commission of the offense, as a result of the discharge of the firearm, was great bodily harm caused to Ronald Stewart? Yes. Verdict as to count 4. We, the jury, find as follows: as to count 4 of the charge, the defendant is guilty of attempted felony murder. Special finding form regarding statute 775.087, count 4. During the commission of the offense, did the defendant actually possess a firearm? Yes. During the commission of the offense, did the defendant personally discharge a firearm? Yes. Verdict as to count 5. We, the jury, find as follows as to count 5 of the charge. The defendant is guilty of attempted felony murder. Special finding form regarding statute 775.087 as to count 5. During the commission of the offense, did the defendant actually possess a firearm? Yes. During the commission of the offense, did the defendant personally discharge a firearm? Yes. So say we all, dated the 16th day of October 2019, signed by the foreperson.
Thank you. Stay, wish the jury poll? Defense? All right, ladies and gentlemen, if you'll answer yes or no to the question you're being asked.
Jury number 261, is this your true and correct verdict? Jury number 741, is this your true and correct verdict? Jury number 433, is this your true and correct verdict? Yes. Jury number 65, is this your true and correct verdict? Jury number 3146, is this your true and correct verdict? Jury number 1276, is this your true and correct verdict? Yes. Jury number 1425, is this your true and correct verdict? Jury number 1121, is this your true and correct verdict? Yes. Jury number 921, is this your true and correct verdict? Yes. Jury number 1066, is this your true and correct verdict?
Typical polling of the jurors to make certain this is in fact how they voted, but I want to bring in for initial reaction as we continue to watch this live video feed coming from the same courtroom that, again, we watched the infamous trial of Casey Anthony. Bill, you sat in that courtroom. Your reaction, all 6 charges, guilty, 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 and guilty as charged.
Well, obviously, the prosecution put on a strong case. The facts were in the favor of the prosecution. The defense did an excellent job at trying to raise reasonable doubt or say this wasn't a first-degree murder, but the jury applied the law to the facts. This was their verdict. Now, Greg, what will happen is these jurors that decided his fate as to the guilt phase will now, along with the 2 alternates that were still sequestered, go back into court and will move directly into the penalty phase. The jury will decide whether he gets life or death.
Now remember, this is the first trial of the 2 that Markeith Loyd has faced, and we want to bring in now our reporter, Channel 9 reporter Field Sutton, who has been covering this from the very beginning. And Field, we were looking for some reaction from Markeith in the courtroom, because we know that he has had a stun cuff, if you will, on him that the jurors couldn't see, because we've seen his shenanigans in court throughout all of this. Any reaction that you've seen from any of his family members, from him or Sade Dixon's family when this verdict was announced?
I've been standing outside here in front of the camera, and I don't have a monitor available to me, so I don't have a good view. In fact, we have 2 other crews inside right now who undoubtedly were watching for any reaction, both from Markeith Loyd's family and from Sade Dixon's family. Both sides have been religious in attending this trial here at all times in large numbers, both the immediate family and friends, supporters, really feeling strongly on both sides. But what you have to look at this point is the fact that we are at the penalty phase now. That is going to start on Monday, because what this jury has done is sent the harshest possible message it could in terms of its verdict. It pulled no punches here. It decided as harshly as possible on every single count. And I want to tell you something that really stuck with me through this case, and I think may have stuck with this jury, even at times that court watchers thought maybe they were feeling somewhat sympathetic to Markeith Loyd. Here it was. The night that this all happened, many hours after he shot and killed his pregnant ex-girlfriend, Markeith Loyd texted her and said, "I hope you don't make it." I mean, think about that. It is cold-blooded, and it certainly came across just as awful as it sounds in that courtroom, thundering between those marble walls. Those jurors heard that and undoubtedly knew what kind of a man they were dealing with. And here's the thing. He tried to argue that it was a typo. I mean, you look at that, you looked at the way the sentence was structured, it just made no sense. It was one of those things that rang hollow.
And Field, as you talk about this, what I thought was very compelling by the state is they said, Markeith claimed that was a typo, and his text always have typos. Look at the text. And a state said, a typo that includes a D-O-N apostrophe T. Had there not been an apostrophe, he might have bought it. But he had to put the proper punctuation in there, and that may have really hit the jurors where they needed to hear it.
I think it did, because that was something you looked over, and they were sitting there, rather. They were obviously stunned by it. It's one of those things that is hard to stomach if you were just a normal, average human being who cares for the lives of others. And really, there were so many other lies that seemed apparent as Markeith Loyd testified, things that they were listening to that we had no idea how they were reacting to at the time. But it just was the kind of thing you sat there and you said, this doesn't seem sincere. I mean, it just happened over and over again.
And he portrayed himself, Field, you and I talked about this, when he got on there as the victim almost in all of this, that he was protecting himself from his pregnant ex-girlfriend at one point, and that's why he had to shoot her. When we heard that, I know in the newsroom, our mouths dropped listening to him say that.
And here's what you got to keep in mind about this. He says he's the victim, that he was scared of her. Well, she's there with her brother. The brother, quite frankly, is somebody kind of built like me. He's fairly scrawny. He's not going to stand up to this 6 foot whatever Markeith Loyd is, 200 some odd pounds, all muscle at that time. I mean, the guy was ripped. So then you have Sade Dixon. She had an unloaded gun, whether it was loaded or not, and whether Markeith Loyd knew that or not, he admitted himself under oath that he had gotten that gun out of her hand, thrown it on the ground over that way, and then he knew she didn't have anything on her, and he said he never suspected that her brother had anything on him. So at that point, he's got 2 smaller unarmed people, and by all accounts, except for his, they're running away from him toward a locked door. Trapped like rats is the expression you might come to mind there, and they have nowhere to go. And then he fires 8 times on Sade Dixon. He fires 2 times on Ron Stewart, and then he turns and runs. So then after all of that, you've got her mom, her younger brother, come out of the door trying to see what's going on. He turns around, could have gone away, which was a huge point the state made, and instead he turns around and continues firing. That is why he's guilty on all these counts from this jury, because they heard all of these chances he had to get away, and he did not. He just kept shooting at people, either killing them or trying to, according to this jury.
Field, great job covering this, explaining it. We're going to listen back in, and I'm going to bring back in Bill Schaefer. What you may have saw Judge Marquez doing right there, and thank you again, Field, was telling the jury, Bill, that they are still sequestered. They're going back to the hotel, and they will remain in a situation where they cannot talk about the case until the jury comes back for Monday, which is still several days away, to decide his fate. So they are sequestered. They can't talk about it, and they can't leave the hotel. Now they individually have to wrestle with, can I vote to put the needle, as the defense attorney said, in Markeith's arm and kill him for these actions?
We heard potential jurors, when they were weeded out, Greg, say that they couldn't make that decision of actually sentencing someone to death, but now this group will have to.
And Bill, there's a live look as you lay this out. What's next for that jury to wrestle with?
Yeah, I think Field summed it up nicely, which was this was the strongest possible verdict that you could have gotten from this jury. That may well send a message to the defense. They have to be worried as to whether or not they can offer enough mitigating circumstances. And don't forget, we heard a lot of mitigating circumstances when Markeith testified.
Which would be reasons why this is justified.
Absolutely. The reason why you don't recommend the death penalty. The defense has to be extremely concerned now by the strength of this verdict that this jury may well recommend a death sentence in this case.
All right, we're trying to establish our feet here. Understand when we go into the courtroom, sometimes we hear noise in the courtroom, sometimes we don't. We just want to explain to our Channel 9 viewers that we don't control the volume. It's the judge who puts a sentence, silences the volume on that. Also, let's talk about the defense at this point. What will go into them preparing this jury to make this decision with Markeith? Are they going to continue to portray him as someone who had a tough upbringing, or more of the victim of all this?
The defense will offer anything and everything that they think may resonate, even with one juror. And don't forget, unlike the guilt phase, penalty phase, you just have to touch one juror. So everything that's ever occurred in Markeith's life, including any mental issues or psychological issues, the defense will try to turn and spin that in the favor of, look, this is why you don't put him to death. Again, hoping to resonate with just one juror.
Again, recapping all 6 of the major charges, guilty, 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 and guilty. They go now to the penalty phase. And then the trial next year, the killing of Deborah Clayton, the sergeant, posthumously moved to lieutenant. There's strong video, apparently, that shows the actual murder of her happening according to the prosecution. Will the jury know that he's been convicted of killing his pregnant ex-girlfriend and shooting at and hitting her brother, and family members were also targeted?
Let's assume that he takes the witness stand and he will be asked, how many times have you been convicted of a felony? 4 times. This one won't count. You know why? Because the defense will appeal the judgment and sentence of this court, no matter what it is, and stay the judgment and sentence of the court until after the Clayton trial is over.
While we're looking at that, listening to you, Bill, we're looking at the video the night that we were all here and that law enforcement finally captured Markeith Loyd after he was on the run from law enforcement. We have a crews in the courtroom right now gathering reaction from families on both sides of this. We have Bill Schaefer here. Greg and I will be here. We're going to bring much more coverage of the guilty verdict of Markeith Loyd coming up right after this. You're watching Channel 9 Eyewitness News.